Boruto's merger with Momoshiki has already started, and the Otsutsuki is talking through the vessel's body, or at least influencing what he says. The way Boruto was sitting in this chapter is completely different than how he has been sitting throughout the series, and when you compare this new pose of Boruto to how Momoshiki used to sit, things seem to become pretty clear. The Otsutsuki may have already taken over the vessel, and there are plenty of hints to back this up. First off, we have the title of the chapter itself, which says "Those Like-Minded." I couldn't find anything in the whole chapter which would have explained what this title is referring to, except one thing, and that is Boruto and Momoshiki becoming aligned in thought. In other words, they are now like-minded, and it's likely because the Otsutsuki has started to pour his thoughts into Boruto without any limitations. Chapter 75 best explains what may be happening here, as the vessel used to hear Momoshiki speaking sometimes, which had been termed as the leakage of thoughts. The only thing here was that Boruto was resisting to the monster's control. That's why we never got to see any major difference in his personality. But now, after they have made a deal to switch places once Jura gets defeated, Boruto has no reason to hold back the psychological influence of Momoshiki on his body, and that is why he seems to be acting more like him. There are more hints hidden within the chapter itself, especially a moment where Boruto took back the control without anyone realizing. But before I explain that, here's a quick scientific explanation to this situation. Boruto is becoming more like Momoshiki because their consciousnesses are starting to synchronize. The reason it didn't happen before was because Momoshiki was too depressed to even act on his impulses, as he didn't see a way out to become Boruto, which was his original goal. So he patiently waited for the vessel to die in order to get free from this captivity. In other words, he didn't even try and check his influence on the vessel, since it was a waste of time in his eyes. But after Boruto opened the possibility for him to take over, he's now playing his cards to intervene with the control of the vessel's body, and surprisingly, Boruto seems to be all okay with it. What was once just thought leakage, with Momoshiki's voice slipping into Boruto's mind, has developed into cognitive fusion, as Boruto's brain is now slowly adopting the thought patterns of the Otsutsuki. This affects not only how he thinks, but also how he acts, explaining his new posture and mannerisms that resemble Momoshiki. Now here's a good visualization of how Boruto and Momoshiki were taking turns to talk in chapter 26. First off, when Inojin gets teleported to the hideout, Boruto can be sitting in the cross-legged Momoshiki pose, meaning the Otsutsuki was in control right now. It's even reflected in the warning that he gave to Inojin about the base having no physical entrance and he cannot leave at his own. The reassurance also comes from Momoshiki, judging by how Boruto is still sitting in the same pose, meaning he knows how far to go with his new body, just to win the trust of the vessel as a part of their pact. One of the reasons for why Boruto may be allowing Momoshiki the control of his body could be to gain the trust of the Otsutsuki and to prove to him that he wasn't lying. The one body two host type of relationship could work out well till Boruto keeps his promise of giving away the control once the Jura threat gets handled, only because Boruto has no other way of assuring Momoshiki till the Jura battle actually takes place. The only way for him to ensure the agreement is by letting the monster take over every now and then, just to provide him a peace of mind. Now back to the chapter. It was apparently again Momoshiki when he said to Inojin that the enemy will not stop at anything. Notice how Boruto used to call Jura by name. He never used to refer to him as an enemy. And looking at how Momoshiki has a habit of referring to other people as inferior creatures, this was definitely him, since calling Jura by name would have been an out of character thing for him to do. After this, Momoshiki says that they don't have the luxury of operating within rules, and one needs to use their brain to think what they truly need. Well, I may be wrong here, but an interesting possibility popped in my mind after perceiving this statement from Momoshiki's point of view. We know the deal between the Otsutsuki and the vessel did not complete within the events of chapter 25. There was definitely a lot more going in between the two, like the response of Momoshiki to what Boruto had offered and their final conclusion as well. So assuming this statement of Momoshiki, where he says that you gotta be always thinking what you truly want using your mind, comes from personal experience, it could be that he had thought about the proposal of Boruto and then came up with his own terms that would have put him at ease. Back to the chapter, after Boruto is done with the enemy speech, Koji gives him a weird look and questions him if it has been resolved. Look at how before he continues, Boruto can be seen with his hand on the face, meaning Momoshiki was still in control at this point. Then Koji asks a question which was directed at him and not the monster. In terms of Momoshiki, you offered him some sort of deal, didn't you? And after hearing this question, Boruto quickly puts his hand down and tells Koji to relax as he will keep his promise. Koji responds by saying saying he doesn't like this attitude and that wasn't an answer. Then Boruto in the next panel is now in a normal posture as he asks Koji how many people were supposed to die in the sand mission. He also expresses some disappointment as Koji has been holding back essential and inconvenient information to himself, so maybe keeping the Momoshiki deal to himself was just a way to make Koji have a taste of his own medicine. Well, this is where I believe Boruto snapped and took back the control of his body. Till now it was Momoshiki speaking, but when a question got directed to him, he instantly switched places. Also notice how Koji observed this unusual behavior of Boruto and only then he asked him about Momoshiki. Well, it only makes sense if Koji already knew that it was the monster talking and he wanted to extract more information of what type of deal it was, just to run the prescience in a better way. Not to mention it was definitely the 10 directions, which made him aware about the Momoshiki situation at first place. But since he had to ask Boruto about the full deal, it can be concluded that he saw a future where Momoshiki is controlling the vessel's body and not the real conversation which took place in the other dimension. This is essentially because the prescience of Koji cannot access such realms, as Aida Senringan also failed to see the interaction between Boruto and Momoshiki in chapter 67. After Koji gives his explanation about the Mangekyou Sharingan awakening and how it ties to preventing a number of unnecessary deaths, Boruto quickly crossed his legs again and sits back, and I really believe this was Momoshiki who snapped back at this moment. Right here he said we are wasting time, so let's move on, not something Boruto would usually say, as how I expect him to react was by asking something like what's the role of Sarada and the Mangekyou in future, as well as all the important details, especially because he had heard about this eye from Sasuke and how it's a great power. But why would he get back in his arrogant pose and ask Koji to move on while seeing the discussion of the Mangekyou as a waste of time? Well, it's only because it was Momoshiki who saw it as pointless, and that makes sense on his end too, cause what matters to him is the objective of defeating Jura. He doesn't care about Sarada or any of Boruto's comrades, so he isn't interested in hearing all that. The faster they get rid of the Shinju, the quicker will be his turn to take full control of Boruto. Momoshiki's response to Boruto's deal could be to divide the takeover in two parts, as he wants to take the destiny of the vessel in his own hands, something which would have helped him to gain the control of Boruto if he had allowed him to take over after the omnipotence twist. But since that never happened, Momoshiki doesn't want to take a chance now, so he must have proposed temporary and timely takeovers of Boruto's body just to avoid wasting a lot of time, and that's exactly what went down in this chapter. Now there's an interesting story entanglement that I would like to mention here. As I already explained what the title of this chapter actually referred to, there is another element which fuels this mind takeover theory, and that is the involvement of Inojin. We know Koji acquired him to connect with Shikamaru for the sake of their upcoming mission, and the ability which aids them in achieving that is the telepathy power of the Yamanaka clan. It's from the family of their mind transfer jutsu, and by introducing Inojin and his Yamanaka abilities at this precise moment, the writers are not just providing a tactical advantage, they are also layering the story with the symbolical bridge between minds. This allows the audience to intuitively sense that Boruto and Momoshiki's connection is no random plot device, but a deliberate storytelling choice that will play a pivotal role in upcoming events. And when you look at how Boruto started acting like Momoshiki just after the entry of Inojin in their endeavor, everything becomes pretty more clear. Well, if this theory of Momoshiki having the frequent access of Boruto comes true, then we might be witnessing some interesting interactions in future which could unveil a lot more new lore, like Momoshiki's conversation with Kawaki mid-battle, which might even divert his attention from Jura to Boruto for obvious reasons. What I'm personally excited for is the insights of Momoshiki on the Ten Tails and the Shinjutsu, just like the time when he revealed some Shibai lore to us, as well as confirming the existence of more Otsutsuki gods. Looking at how Demon Shinjutsu will be nullified in the coming chapters, I'm expecting Momoshiki to give his own take on Mamoshi's ability and how it would possibly neglect the powers of an Otsutsuki god. Well, I also promised a hidden ability that Boruto shall be unlocking with the Byakugan in the thumbnail, so let's understand how that's going to turn out. Every Kama user is expected to be as strong as the Otsutsuki who was behind the seal, but when you look at how things have been for Code and Kawaki, some things don't add up. While Code was supposed to be stronger than Jigen, Sasuke managed to cut his eye, even when he had the Grime army on his side. Meanwhile, Jigen straight up obliterated both Naruto and Sasuke, and they were not even able to leave a mark on him. This is likely because while the Kama can make one stronger, the real deal lies within the experience of the host Otsutsuki. Kawaki with his limiters off was able to perform perform well against Jura, but if he was actually at Ishiki's level, maybe Boruto would have never needed the help of Momoshiki at first place. So what truly makes a Kama wielder weaker than the host Otsutsuki is obviously the experience. This means while Boruto can channel the power of the Kama without Momoshiki's help, he cannot take that power to its peak. And that's where we get the answer to one of the most asked questions. The best way for Boruto to defeat Jura is to let Momoshiki have the control of his body just so he could channel the Kama power in the best way possible. In other words, using an Otsutsuki's abilities is different than utilizing their raw power. Ishiki was a master at using the Kokugan with centuries worth of experience, while Kawaki only has a few years worth of experience with the dojutsu. So before I explain how the Jura battle could go down in 2 rounds, let me put forward a great analogy from chapter 75 and 80 to explain this better. You all must be familiar with this panel of Kawaki where there was some blood on his face and horn on his head, likely through a new stage of Kama, but it never appeared in the story and we finally got an answer to why. After it was revealed that there are many possibilities for what type of futures can unfold, and thankfully the one where Kawaki kills Boruto in this scene was avoided. But when you look at this panel from chapter 80, just before Sasuke came to Boruto's rescue, Momoshiki offered him to switch up in order to get rid of everyone who's after his life. This means he was even confident in killing Kawaki right here, which would have yet again avoided the future where Boruto would have died. And if Sasuke hadn't come to his rescue, maybe this panel would have become a reality in no time. So Momoshiki's confidence to kill everyone only says one thing: he could have managed to take down Kawaki in this new Kama stage if Boruto would have allowed him the full control of his body. It was just the resistance of the vessel which held him back from going all out, and this acts as a testimony to how strong he can actually get when Boruto would let him use his body with no restrictions. So the same is going to happen in the upcoming Jura battle, and it seems like Boruto already knows how to play his cards. The first round would likely start with Kawaki and Boruto fighting Jura together, maybe after sending him to another dimension with the combined effort of their Kama seals. When Jura would get a bit weakened or would show some signs of getting taken down, he could unleash his true Ten Tails power, which would force Boruto to switch up with Momoshiki, who would then take the matters in his own hands to destroy the enemy. Keep in mind, Jura is just an intelligent incarnation of the Ten Tails, and Momoshiki has a lot of knowledge on this species, so that might also turn helpful in defeating the monster in no time. Not to mention, Momoshiki can access and amplify every ability of Boruto, including the Uzuhiko. So if he somehow manages to land a blow on Jura without giving him the time to nullify the effects, well, that's pretty much how he will get taken down. But wait, in the flash forward, Boruto has awakened the Jogan and Kawaki doesn't want to kill him anymore. So how exactly do we reach there? Well, you can have your answers in these videos, so check them out right now and make sure to subscribe for a Daemon vs Mamushi video, and I will see you next time.